All right, folks, it is time for the first Slightly Biased Power Rankings of this NBA season. If you are new to the channel or were not around last year for whatever reason, well, welcome in, right? You've atoned for your sins. Welcome in. But if this is your first time here at the channel, I like to churn these out about once a month. Weekly NBA Power Rankings. I just feel like not much changes in the span of a week in the NBA, but over the course of a month, which is like a fifth of the season, that's when you start to see real substantial changes. So I like to do like monthly check-ins for these teams. These rankings are based off of how these teams have played so far this season, not how I think these teams are going to be playing moving forward. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving. I know that I did. Hand up. I'm that weird guy at the table, that uncle. Some people like to get too political at the dinner table. I like to get a little out there as well. My family's just like, please eat some of your turkey. That's what they refer to me as. They refer to me as slightly biased if I'm in their presence. Please eat some of your turkey. And I'm sitting there saying, it's LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller are the only guys on the team who could create their own offense. And everyone just stares at me because they just don't get it. All right, I like to break these things down into tiers. Let's get right into it with the sad, bad tier. These are teams that are not very good and also not very fun to watch for one reason or another. And we're getting things kicked off here with the New Orleans Pelicans, who started the season 2-0. They were 2-0 to open up the season. Since then, they are 2-15 with the worst net rating in the NBA over that stretch. It's really, they're a talented team, obviously, when they're all healthy, but here's the problem, right? This was the injury report in a game they had against the Cavs a week or two ago. Brandon Ingram, this is all who missed the game. Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, DeJounte Murray, Jordan Hawkins, Jose Alvarado, CJ McCollum. That team is the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. If you do just a Tom Thibodeau 8-9-man rotation with that team's making that team has home court advantage in the Eastern Conference. That's who all missed a game for them a couple weeks ago against the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, it's just insane the amount of injuries that they're dealing with. They're getting some of their horses back, like DeJounte Murray made his return a couple nights ago. Did not look very good, but he is back. CJ McCollum is back. Trey Murphy came back a week or two ago. But it's just they don't look like a basketball team. And maybe my judgment's a little clouded here because I was at their game against the Mavericks a week ago whenever they lost by 40 points. I was telling Herb Jones, we're going to come get him. We're going to come save him.
Herb, we're coming to save you, Herb. Herb Jones, you'll be a Maverick soon. It's all right.
But in their current form, they just don't really look like an NBA team. And over the past month, I think they've been comfortably the worst and least competitive team in the NBA. But not too far behind them is the Washington Wizards. I feel bad about putting the Wizards here and not the fun bad tier, which is coming up, because they do have a lot of fun things going on with their young core. Bilal Coulibaly, I did a video about him, a couple weeks into the season. I think he's been incredible so far. He's been fun to watch. He does so many things that should encourage you as a Washington Wizards fan. Alex Sarr, the concerns that we had for him entering the season offensively have definitely reared their ugly head quite a bit, but he looks very good defensively. Like that much is certain. As a rookie, the flashes that he shows defensively is exactly what you want to see if you are a fan of the Washington Wizards. Bob Carrington looks like a point guard of the future, this 3-level scoring threat who can also captain an offense. That looks like a great pick for you guys. Keyshawn George looks like a player who can contribute at a high level as well. So your rookie draft class looks really solid. The reason why I have the Wizards in the sad bad tier rather than the fun bad tier, I fucking hate watching Kyle Kuzma. I cannot stand watching him. I'm very fortunate he did not want to come to the Dallas Mavericks because I'm not a fan of his from a basketball perspective, and it's brutal watching him go out there on a nightly basis and be the guy that they sort of play around. So, yeah, that's why they find themselves here. Like, do I enjoy watching Kyle Kuzma put up 28 shots in a game? Absolutely not. I don't enjoy that whatsoever. They also currently rank dead last in offense and dead last in defense in the NBA. So, a recipe for losing a lot of games. And rounding out this tier, we have the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, how can you not have them here? They're 4-13 so far this season. Joel Embiid's played 4 games. Paul George has played 8 games. Joel Embiid, even in the 4 games that he's played, has not looked good. Looks like a shell of himself from a physical perspective, which is incredibly alarming. I'm not sure what's going on with that knee. He's missing time again to deal with this knee pain that he's having. I think this season might just be cooked already for the Sixers team. Paul George hyperextended his knee again, the same situation he had before the season started. Caleb Martin has not looked very good for them whatsoever. And I see Philadelphia 76ers fans who are like, Andre Drummond's not a starting level center. Well, that's not what you brought him in for. Like, all of these guys don't look great right now. Eric Gordon doesn't look good. Kyle Lowry doesn't look good. All of these guys don't look good because you have a bunch of grandpas on your team. And the idea was these grandpas, these grandfathers on our squad are just going to have to go out there 12, 14, 15 minutes a night and just make things happen. But with all these injuries, they have a bigger role forced upon them. Yeah, it's going to look rough. Friend of the show, Trill Bro Dude, had a tweet that was just so funny to me that if you told Sixers fans before the season how good Jared McCain was going to be to start his rookie season. I mean, he's playing at a level we haven't seen from a rookie guard since Ja Morant, like Luka Doncic. Like, that's how good that he's been out of the gates. If you told Sixers fans that entering the season, they would have thought they were a super team. Like, you would have thought they were 14-3, not 3-14. And yet they are 3-14. Tyrese Maxey's been a little underwhelming to start this season. I mean, all is bad. The vibes are fucking terrible, and they belong in this sad bad tier. They're a hard basketball team to watch, which is just kind of the most unfortunate place to find yourself. I also saw this stat floating around. They're having the worst shooting season ever so far on open shots. I mean, those shots are going to start dropping. Things are going to start looking a little bit better for them. And the good news is they are in the Eastern Conference. Like, if there's one thing they should be thankful for, Thanksgiving yesterday as of the time I'm recording this, one thing that they should be thankful for, or they should have been thankful for, is that they are in the Eastern Conference. So there is time to dig yourself out of this. But man, that's about as tough as it gets. I just now realized that I'm not wearing any glasses. I'm not going back and re-recording all of this. So you guys are getting an inside look into how the slightly biased mind operates. Okay? You don't take this for granted. Seriously. And now we're moving on to what is personally my favorite tier anytime we do these rankings. That is the fun bad tier. These are teams that are not good record-wise. These are teams that will not finish high in the standings by the end of the season. But damn it, they're competitive. They're fun to watch for one reason or another. And I do enjoy checking them out on League Pass from time to time. Kicking off this tier, we have the Utah Jazz, who are finally fully embracing the tank. We've seen the past couple of seasons. They're frisky to start things off, and they're a competitive team. They're playing their veterans. They're playing their vets over some of their younger guys. And by the time the trade deadline comes around, they fix it all, and then they bottom out the rest of the season. That's not true so far this year. They are full-fledged tanking out of the gates. They are playing guys like Isaiah Collier and Bryce Sensabaugh down the stretch of games. And there's been some disappointing stuff, like Cody Williams, who they drafted 10th overall, just does not look ready to play in the NBA whatsoever. Like, he's been assigned to the G League. He's going to need some time in the G League because he's been one of the most, if not maybe the most disappointing rookie so far this season. And their second-year guys who you were hoping to see some breakout performances out of, you just haven't really gotten yet. Keontae George is breaking my heart. I kind of fell in love with him last year as this rookie who just didn't give a fuck. Shot the ball anytime he got it. Was never afraid. I love that from a player, but he's 48% true shooting so far this season. Terrible decision making. He's not a guy I think you can slot in as your point guard moving forward as a franchise. Bryce Sensabaugh he's just there. Taylor Hendricks had a horrible season-ending injury early on in the season. Larry Markkinen is starting to round into shape. He had a 5-game stretch recently, 26 points per game, 47% from 3 on 8 attempts per game. Walker Kessler's looked really good so far this season when he's on the court. They are a different basketball team because teams are shooting 71% at the rim against them so far this season. Yeah, they're not good, but they're not trying to be. So all is fair, except this one pains me a little bit, but I think I have to go with the Charlotte Hornets. They're not a great basketball team to begin with, and they are just destroyed by injuries currently. Now, the good news is it does sound like Mark Williams is actually going to step foot on a basketball court and play NBA games in the near future, which is exciting times for the Hornets. But the story for them so far this season, obviously, it starts and ends with LaMelo Ball. I mean, he's playing like the best point guard in the Eastern Conference so far this season. I don't even think it's really remotely close. I mean, 30 points per game, 7 assists per game, 57% true shooting. Is he just throwing up 35 shots a game? Yeah, he is. But realistically, there's not much else that this Hornets team can do. Without him and Brandon Miller, nobody else on this team is really capable of creating offense for themselves. Trey Mann's missed some time. He's really the only other guy who can do that, and he's kind of hot and cold on that front. Brandon Miller had a 3-game stretch recently, 33 points per game, 56% from the field, 55% from 3 on 11 attempts. NBAU tweeted this stat out recently that Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball currently average 22 3-point attempts per game as a duo. That would be the most ever in the history of the NBA by a duo. And they're fun to watch because LaMelo Ball just goes out there and bullshits. I mean, the shots that he puts up don't even fucking make sense. I tried that one-legged step back fading 3 that he hit a couple of nights ago. I mean, obviously I'm not an NBA player, right? That kind of goes without saying, although I could see the confusion. I'm not one. I don't even understand how you even generate enough power to get it close to the rim, but then to have it with some accuracy. I mean, the fact that that's just a shot that he obviously has practiced his whole entire life is just insane. And he's pulling it out of his bag in an NBA game. I don't understand him. He's one of the most enjoyable players and fun players to watch in the entire NBA. And he's having a tremendous season. But they stink defensively. They give up a ton of shots at the rim. They give up a ton of open threes. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. And like I mentioned earlier, they desperately miss their bigs, who it does sound like they're coming back soon. So that's nice. But here they are. Okay, next, I think this is where I'm putting the Chicago Bulls, who are 3-2 to start their season. They are 5-10 since an interesting season so far for Chicago. They are one of the worst defenses that we see in the NBA. They give up a ton of shots at the rim, and they give up a high percentage at the rim. So teams just feast in the paint against the Chicago squad. That's not really that much of a surprise with guys like Nikola Vucevic on the squad. They are the worst half-court defense in the NBA so far, but they are pretty frisky offensively. They play incredibly fast. They have the most shot attempts in the NBA so far. Only the Celtics have attempted more threes than the Chicago Bulls team. I do want to point out that I got some of these stats a few days ago, so some of them might have changed a tiny bit, but they're pretty much accurate so far. But there's been a few positives. I mean, Zach LaVine has been really solid so far this season. 65% true shooting, 22.5 points per game, 44% from three on over 7 attempts per game. There's definitely a contender out there that will talk themselves into trading for Zach LaVine. And there might even be a contender out there who talks himself into trading for Vucevic, who's currently over 40% from three on the season, which, a team that's just looking for a stretch big, like the Lakers, for example, would see that and sign themselves up immediately. The Giddey experience, I thought that would go over a little bit better for the Bulls than it has, admittedly. Matas Bazulis has shown some encouraging flashes here and there as well. So, they've been a pretty fun team to watch so far this season, but they are bad. Next up, we do have the Portland Trailblazers, who they are the second worst offense in the league so far this season, trailing only the Washington Wizards, who are, again, dead last in offense and dead last in defense. Let's clap it up for the Wizards. How impressive is that to be dead last in both? Good work, guys. But one of the things the Trailblazers do have going for them is they're a feisty defense, man. They're top 7 in half-court defense. A few reasons for that. Donovan Clingan, who is now dealing with a knee problem, unfortunately has missed a week or so as of the time I'm recording this. But we made a video about him. He's been a game changer for them. I mean, when he's on the floor, it's very difficult to get to the paint and score against this Portland Trailblazers team. And they have a bunch of rangy, athletic wings who guard the perimeter well, who have good ball pressure, like Deni Avdija and Tumani Kamara. Real quick, with all the injuries they've had to their center position, Clingan out, Ayton's missed some time, Robert Williams, obviously we don't need to talk about that. Deni Avdija has played some small ball 5 for them, and it has been pretty good defensively. So I want to give a shout out to Deni Avdija because it hasn't been a great season for him offensively, but defensively there's something there. And, Jeremy Grant, who has been a solid defender throughout his career, and lately there's been sort of an effort thing for him over the past couple of years, but I think he's played well defensively for them. Shaedon Sharpe, we were all kind of waiting for Shaedon Sharpe. It took him a while to get going after making his season debut recently, but he had a 5-game stretch, 24.5 points per game, 39% from three on 7.5 attempts per game. He has flashes here and there where you're like, okay, this could be the guy moving forward offensively. It's just, can he stay on the court long enough, and can he be consistent enough to make that a reality? I'm not sure. But the Blazers have been, they've been a kind of a feisty team so far this season. Next up, we have the Raptors. The Raptors are a fun team to watch, in my opinion. They are terrible defensively. Just in terms of three-point frequency, no team shoots less in the NBA than this Toronto Raptors squad. And they are 5-14, but 7 of their 14 losses have been clutch losses. Scotty Barnes has recently returned from injury, and they're just a much better team when Scotty Barnes is on the court. RJ Barrett, 46 games with the Toronto Raptors, 22 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, 4.5 assists per game, 36% from three with nearly 6 free throw attempts per game. Jakob Poeltl has legitimately been really solid for them, really ever since they traded for him. They've just been so much better when he's on the floor. 8 points per 100 possessions better so far this season when Jakob Poeltl's on the court for them. I sort of mentioned this in the preseason that their numbers last year, they weren't good, but when you looked at like their main 4 guys, who at the time, Emmanuel Quickley, RJ Barrett, Scotty Barnes, and Jakob Poeltl, they were very, very successful on the court together. Like they had the net rating of a very, very good basketball team. And we really haven't seen Emmanuel Quickley at all so far this season, so I'll be interested to see how that looks when he returns. And Grady Dick's at 18 points per game. I mean, he's making it happen, right? He's knocking down threes. He's hitting those pull-up mid-range jumpers that are going to be very, very important for his game. He's having a great, second year. Ochai Abaji's having a really nice leap. He's up to 12 points per game, and he's been absolutely lethal from the corner. They play a lot of close games. I mean, they're a fun basketball team to watch. They are bad, but they are a fun basketball team to watch. Next up, we have the mid-tier presented to you by the Chicago Bulls. The Chicago Bulls, unfortunately, have not been in this tier or even above this tier in quite some time, but this tier is named after them because this is what they were for what felt like fucking 10 years. We're kicking this tier off with the Atlanta Hawks, who are having a very, very interesting start to their season. Disappointing in a lot of ways, encouraging in some others, like encouraging Dyson Daniels, who is the focal point, at least player-wise, in the DeJounte Murray trade that you just made this past offseason. 2.2 defensive EPM, which is the 15th best in the NBA. 3.2 steals per game. That is the most in the NBA so far. And he is on pace to have the most deflections ever. He's around 7 deflections per game so far this season. Been an absolute menace. Got to see it really see it against the Mavericks a couple of nights ago when the Mavericks went to Atlanta to take on the Hawks. And he did a really good job on Kyrie Irving, but he just blows up ball screens. Like, ball screens just do not exist to Dyson Daniels. That's something that's going to be very important for them moving forward, and he just feels like a perfect backcourt mate next to Trae Young. Like, that's kind of what you wanted DeJounte Murray to be. DeJounte Murray was not that. Speaking of Trae Young, leads the league in assists per game so far this season, but really is struggling to score the basketball. He's struggling in isolation. He's struggling from behind the three-point line. He's still as good as ever in the pick and roll, right? Still a pick and roll maestro, and still is incredibly underrated as a playmaker, which kind of sounds insane to say because, again, he's leading the league in assists per game. I don't think people really appreciate the level of playmaker that Trae Young is because it's easier just to slam dunk on him because his hair and beard combo do look a little strange. But I am worried about the scoring stuff for Trae Young. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't. Oneki Okongwu looks like a bust. He's just a 6'8" tweener. That's the worst thing that you can possibly be. There was a time where he looked like a guy who could be like a really strong, sort of smaller center who could rotate out on the perimeter, do a bunch of different things, but could also play power forward next to a more traditional center. Neither of those things necessarily look true anymore. I do really like Jalen Johnson as a player. There's still work that needs to be done with him, but I think he plays really, really well off of Trae Young. He's a great cutter. He's going to get spoon-fed lobs because of his cutting ability playing next to a guy like Trae Young. But I also love that he can be like a legitimate secondary ball handler, and he works hard on the glass. And he does have lapses defensively. He does have bad turnover problems. You know, he has a 15% turnover rate, which is very, very high. But you see all the flashes there for a guy like that. He's been very encouraging so far this season. And they've dealt with a good amount of injuries, but I mean, every team has really at this point in the season. This is just kind of who they are. They just feel like a mediocre team, which is kind of what I expected them to be heading into the season. Next up, my entire time doing power rankings, I'm not sure I've ever seen the Pistons outside of the bad tier, but here they find themselves in the mid tier. They've been a competitive basketball team, man. I mean, they play in a ton of clutch games. When I grabbed these stats a couple days ago, they have been in 10 clutch games so far this season, a 92 offensive rating in the clutch, which is a very, very bad number in case you're wondering. A lot of that has to do with Cade Cunningham, my guy Cade Cunningham. Statistically, it's looked pretty good for Cade. He does have some moments. He's been a triple-double machine so far this season. The efficiency's been really bad. The turnovers have been very bad, and they've been very bad down the stretch of games, and it's really been a problem for this Pistons team in clutch minutes. So I don't know what to make of Cade's season so far. I thought this would be a breakout year for Cade, and in some ways he has broken out. Like this Pistons team just looks so much better when he's on the court. It's like barely functions at times without him, but he has to clean up some of this stuff if he wants to take a real leap forward. And I don't know if we're getting there, right? But Jaden Ivey has been really solid so far this season. 18 points per game, 36% from three, 53% true shooting. That's not a great number or anything like that. But just the eye test tells me that Jaden Ivey's really, really starting to get it going. He's playing next to Cade Cunningham. That duo looks better than they've ever looked, playing off of one another. And some of the vets that they've brought in, like you watch games, Tobias Harris we can point and laugh at and make fun of, but he is kind of a stabilizing presence for this team. Like you feel it when he's out there, especially like in late stretches during game. Malik Beasley's damn near 40% from three on 9 attempts per game so far this season. And the Jalen Duren stuff has been concerning to me. They plugged Isaiah Stewart into the starting five recently. I think that was sort of a message to Jalen Duren, and Jalen Duren's had some good performances since then, so we will see. But I've been expecting more out of Jalen Duren. Defensively, it's just been really bad for him, and I think everything's just kind of spilling over, and he's just having kind of a confidence problem is what it looks like. But Beef Stew has been really solid for them. So I like the way JV Bickerstaff has these boys playing. The Pistons look like they could be a playing team. We'll see what it looks like come March, come April. But as it stands currently, they are for sure competitive enough in the Eastern Conference to be in the play-in mix. Next, I mean, it has to be the Indiana Pacers here. They're 17th in offensive rating. That simply will not cut it with this group. I mean, they're a team that's built to be a dominant, high-flying offense. They're never going to be a great defensive team, so they have to be great offensively if they want to be a competitive basketball team that plays deep into the playoffs like they did a year ago. They're 27th in three-point frequency. Their pace has slowed down tremendously. They're 8th in the NBA so far this season. That's still high, but let's not forget there were times last year where this was like the fastest-paced offense we've ever seen, and it does feel like it's been a concerted effort to have a more balanced approach where you're sacrificing a little bit offensively to be a little bit better defensively, but still their defense hasn't been good enough to even justify this, really. Tyrese Halliburton, we know all of the struggles that he's had so far this season. And they are now 7-2 at home and 2-8 on the road. And that does give some credence to this theory that's been going around that Tyrese Halliburton's back is bothering him, which I fully believe. Like, if you just watch him play physically, the way he gets up and down the court, the way that he moves around the court, he does not look anywhere near the same player that he was last year, even like after the hamstring injury. At home this season, Tyrese Halliburton, 23 points per game, 9.5 assists per game, 63% true shooting. On the road, 12 points per game, 8 assists per game, 43% true shooting. People made fun of a tweet that was going around that said Tyrese Halliburton sleeping in the hotel beds. It's different. His back doesn't feel as good when he wakes up. People were making fun of that. But there's obviously something to this. Like, this clearly is something that's bothering him. But Siakam's been great. He's been playing at an all-star level. Benedict Matherin's been really, really solid for them. He's such a fun player to watch. So they do have that going for them. I'm really not sure what to make of this Pacers team. Jarris Walker, I missed with that one. That was a bad miss on my end. Next up, it's hard to believe that I'm putting this team here, but this is where they need to be. That's the Minnesota Timberwolves. They've just been incredibly mediocre so far this season. Their vibes are, if you just exclude the Pacers or the Sixers, who are clearly in a class of their own when it comes to terrible, horrible fucking vibes. It's like deviled eggs on Thanksgiving, clearly in a class of its own in terms of horrible shit food. Right? That's sort of where the 76ers are. Then you have the Minnesota Timberwolves. Then the Timberwolves are like the cranberry, the cranberry sauce, where it's like bad, but it's justifiably bad. Like, that's where the Timberwolves are. They're basically league average in every single stat and metric there is. Anthony Edwards, 44% from three so far this season on incredibly high volume. A lot has been made of that. If he's making them, then shoot them. I don't get why there's been such an outrage about that. If he's making the shots, then fucking shoot the shots. Three's worth more than two. But he still struggles to make the advanced reads in terms of playmaking. That's what we've been talking about from Anthony Edwards. We were talking about a 3-point leap. When everyone talks about Anthony Edwards making the step, it's playmaking. That's the step that he needs to make. And it feels like he doesn't read help defenses. He doesn't anticipate help the way that we're sort of expecting at this stage in his career. The Julius Randle stuff has been pretty much as expected. Weird. Their defense is 8 points per 100 possessions worse when Julius Randle's on the court, but their offense is 8 points per 100 possessions better. Like, they do kind of need his playmaking, but I even think that those numbers can be deceiving because their offense does look really fucking wonky when he's out there sometimes. Shit on Cat all you want, but he was a quick decision maker. When the ball moves around and the ball got to Cat, he was shooting, he was driving, he was being aggressive, he was attacking mismatches. Sometimes it was bad. Sometimes he would, have a dumb frustration foul where he would elbow a guy in the trachea and get an offensive foul. But that quick decision making was important. Like, that's just not there with Julius Randle. Anthony Edwards will see two on the ball. He'll swing it to Julius Randle, and Julius Randle will wait for the defense to rotate and get set before he does something. Just want to chime back in really quickly here. I'm editing this video. I forgot to mention, they really miss a guy like Kyle Anderson as well, just like a stabilizing presence off of the bench, somebody who obviously can play defense, somebody who obviously has good length as well, but just somebody who's a very good connective passer, somebody who's a very good connective playmaker, just an adult in the room. Somebody who, yes, he can't shoot threes, yes, team sag off of him, yes, that was a problem in the playoffs, especially in that series against the Mavericks where he was unplayable, but having a guy like that off the bench where you just feel like you're going to get a good shot. This team is still so dependent on Mike Conley, who's so old. Look at some of the three-point shooting numbers for this team when Mike Conley is on the floor versus when he's off. It's absolutely insane. Kyle Anderson was somebody who kind of helped with that off the bench last year. They just miss guys like these, and it really shows. It really just kind of shows the lack of great connective playmakers that they're just really missing right now. Dante DiVincenzo has been awful, 33% from three so far this season, and borderline unplayable defensively. That's really been the part that's been bad for them. But I would say that it's not all bad. Like, they do have the third best lineup with over 100 possessions played in the NBA. Mike Conley, Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert. Yes, there are a couple guys missing in that group. You will notice there's a couple guys missing. They also have the fifth best lineup: Anthony Edwards, Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Julius Randle, Naz Reid. Now, what does that tell you? That Rudy Gobert paired with a guy like Julius Randle probably is not going to work for several different reasons. But if it's Randle and Naz Reid or Gobert and Naz Reid, it makes some more sense. They'll figure this stuff out, but it has been very disappointing so far this season. And then it doesn't help that Anthony Edwards comes out and calls the team dog shit, basically, after a game. I like that he did that, but it's just clear and obvious that the vibes there are fucked. Rob Dillingham's been good, though, so they have that going for him. Next up, how about this team, the Brooklyn Nets? One of the biggest surprises so far this season. They entered the season widely considered one of the worst teams in the NBA. I want to say Vegas had them as the lowest win total in the league. I could be wrong about that, but that's what my memory tells me. They are currently 9-10, and they are absolutely too good for their own good. A lot of that has to do with a guy like Dennis Schroeder, who just is such a nice stabilizing presence for them late in games as the game winds down. The ball's in his hands. I feel good. Like, as a neutral observer, I feel like the Nets are going to have a good play happen when the ball's in Dennis Schroeder's hands. There's a wide list of contenders that I think would love to have a guy like Dennis Schroeder, the way that he's playing so far this season. If I'm the Brooklyn Nets, I am looking to trade him quickly. I know that you want guys like that. You want vets like that on your team. I get all of that 100%, but let's just call a spade a spade. You need to be tanking. And a guy like Dennis Schroeder is too good for you currently. The same can be said for Cam Johnson, who's been incredible so far this season. 19 points per game, 42% from three on 8 attempts. He's been in the league for quite some time, but we've seen like a real self-creation leap from him so far this season that, again, if you're a contending team, you're willing to pay up for a guy like Cam Johnson 100%. Cam Thomas, 25 points per game, 59% true shooting, dealing with a hamstring injury. Unfortunately, he's going to miss some time moving forward, which you hate to see because he was making an outside all-star case. The advanced metrics still aren't very fond of a guy like Cam Thomas, but he has been fun to watch. But they move the ball around. They play at an incredibly slow pace. They are the slowest team in the NBA so far this season, but they're the 6th best offense in the half court so far. And then you got a guy like Tyrese Martin dropping 30 points in a game against the Suns. Tyrese Martin. Like crazy shit going on in there in Brooklyn. Rounding out this tier, a team that I'm not sure what to do with. I'm not sure what to ever do with. That is the Miami Heat, who are 8-8 so far this season. They've only played 16 games. That is the fewest amount of games played so far this season. They've had a very strange schedule. And yeah, they've just been kind of a mediocre team. They have looked much better over the last couple of weeks, really since Jimmy Butler has returned, and he's looked like the Jimmy Butler that we are accustomed to. First 2 games back from injury, 30 points, 10 rebounds, and 12 shots versus the 76ers, and 33 points, 9 rebounds, 17 shots against the Mavericks, a plus 33 total over those 2 games. Bam has not been great so far this season. That's been a real big disappointing thing for me throughout the entire NBA. I picked Bam to win Defensive Player of the Year this season. That's not going to happen. I've been disappointed with the way that he's played so far. But Tyler Hero has been incredible. Like I think he's going to have some real most improved player motion. 24 points per game, 5 assists per game, 42% from 3 so far this season, making it happen from behind the arc, attacking the rim aggressively. Beyond that, his playmaking has been really, really solid. And I do not know where this Miami Heat team would be this season without him. I mean, they would be a 6-win team right now, maybe. Like maybe, considering the injuries to Jimmy Butler and how just lackadaisical and underwhelming Bam has been so far this seaseason. This might be a little bit harsh, but I kind of feel like this is where they are. I just look at them and I think mediocre. All right, next up we have a tier of 3 teams, I think. This is a last-second decision by me to make this tier. I'm going to call it home court in the East because I think these 3 teams would probably be competing for home court in the Eastern Conference. Unfortunately for them, they are in the Western Conference, which makes things difficult. I'm going with the San Antonio Spurs. Like, I kind of believe in this team. They are 10-9. I don't know where they fit in this very difficult Western Conference. Like 5 teams are going to have to miss the play-in tournament. But look, Chris Paul has this effect. You can't deny it. Anywhere he goes, they become better. Victor Wembanyama has been playing much better as of late. He had a 5-game stretch recently, 32 points per game, 11.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 3.5 blocks, 44% from 3 on 12.5 attempts per game. And before the season started, the reason why I went with Bam as Defensive Player of the Year is I didn't think the Spurs defense by the end of the season would have been good enough to really justify having a Defensive Player of the Year. But so far this season, obviously the Spurs defensively so much better when Victor Wembanyama is on the court, and they're 13th right now in defense. Stephon Castle is awesome. I mean, he's just been incredible for them so far this season. And they've got a bunch of talent that's playing really well. And Devin Vassell's played 5 games. I think he's going to be such an important piece for this team. He has to stay on the court. But his floor spacing ability, his ability to score the basketball is going to be much needed next to a guy like Victor Wembanyama moving forward. But they're a fun basketball team to watch, man. They play incredibly hard. Again, led by Area 51. That duo defensively, incredible nickname, by the way. But that duo defensively is phenomenal. It's going to be incredible for the next decade plus. Next up, I am going with the Sacramento Kings. They're an interesting basketball team currently. I think they're better than their 9-10 record would indicate, but I'm not sure how much better. This isn't that surprising considering their personnel and going out and getting a guy like DeMar DeRozan this offseason. Their shot diet is probably the worst in the NBA. Their floor spacing has been non-existent. Keegan Murray has been really disappointing so far this season. Kevin Huerter is awful. I mean, he's been awful. It's no coincidence they go out and pick up Jake Crowder off the street, and he starts for them immediately, and they go on to win that game. They shoot more long twos than any team in the NBA by a wide margin. Again, you go out and get a guy like DeMar DeRozan, that's no surprise, really. But they don't really shoot threes. They're 22nd in that department, and they are dead last in shots at the rim. That's tough. That's a tough recipe for a great offense. But, DeMar's missed some time so far this season. Sabonis has missed a couple of games. They've really missed Malik Monk, who's come back recently. But he missed 7 games. I mean, their bench was a complete and total mess without him. 24 points per game off the bench. That is the 3rd worst in the NBA as a team. But again, there's some signs that they might be a little bit better than their record indicates. Like the Fox, Malik Monk, DeMar DeRozan, Keegan Murray, Sabonis lineup is the best 5-man lineup in the NBA so far this season. And next up, I have the Los Angeles Lakers. Yes, their record is 11-7. I think that number is incredibly fraudulent. Their defense stinks. Like you can't be a competitive basketball team with this defense. Like their defense is so terrible that they've had to plug Cam Reddish into their starting 5, and it's not because Cam Reddish is a great basketball player. It's not because he's a great wing defender. It's because they just need somebody. They need somebody who's not like absolutely fucking horrendous defensively, and Cam Reddish is that guy. That speaks to, 1, how bad they are defensively, but 2, another huge problem there is their depth is terrible. Their transition defense is astonishingly bad. 1.4 points per possession in transition, 1.4 points per possession off live ball rebounds. That's a sign of an old team. That's a sign of a team whose effort wanes from time to time. But, they are good offensively. Like Anthony Davis has been tremendous so far this season. They get to the rim. They get to the free throw line more than any team in basketball. They don't shoot a lot of threes, but they do hit them at a solid clip. Dalton Connect's been really, really good for them so far this season as a rookie. That's very encouraging. Very good to see. But Gabe Vincent is woefully bad. Max Christie is awful. D'Lo has stunk like shit. Even Austin Reeves has been a little bit bad. Rui's missed some time recently. That's not a shocker at all. I don't know. They're a competitive basketball team. Their offense, LeBron still being LeBron, AD being as good as he's been so far this season, will win them games, but their defense, it's horrible. This next tier, the good but fatal flaws tier, these are teams that I do think are good. These are teams that I think will figure stuff out over the course of the season. These are teams that would not surprise me at all if they have long playoff runs a few months from now. But there is something that is preventing them from taking that next step, that next leap forward. Kicking off this tier with the Milwaukee Bucks, who obviously were terrible out of the gates to start the season, but they are 7-1 over their last 8 games. They're starting to figure some stuff out. Giannis is playing at a great level. Their record, their schedule has been pretty easy over that stretch where they are winning a lot of games, but they're still making it happen. They are now 9-9, and in the Eastern Conference, let me pull up the standings really quickly. Where does that get you in the East? That gets you the 5 seed, 1 game out of the 4 seed. But I'm going to give them a boost because Giannis is playing out of their mind. When you have a guy playing at that level, you're always going to be competitive. And they've made changes in their rotation that I think have helped them out entirely. Patrick Connaughton is just done, and he does not look like an NBA player. He's pretty much out of the equation. Gary Trent Jr., they have moved to the bench. AJ Green has seen an uptick in minutes. This lineup, Dame, AJ Green, Taurean Prince, Giannis, Brook Lopez, plus 11 in 30 minutes. That's a lineup that I could see them going to quite a bit in the future, up until Chris Middleton comes back at least. Andre Jackson, Action Jackson has seen a minutes uptick. I really like the energy that he provides. Offensively, he's a little bit of a struggle, which could lead to him not being in games down the stretch, but their defense is nearly 12 points per 100 possessions better when he's on the floor, and he just brings an athleticism boost that they desperately need at times. Next up, I do have the Phoenix Suns, who are really difficult to gauge. KD had a stretch where he missed 7 games. The Suns were 8-1 in the 9 games prior to that. They were 1-6 in the 7 games that Kevin Durant missed. They are 1-1 since he's returned. Bradley Beal has missed time, and he left their last game against the Nets with a tweaked left ankle and a left calf strain. So, I mean, when it rains, it fucking pours with this guy. Kevin Durant tweaked his ankle in that game against the Nets as well, though it does seem like he's fine. But when they're healthy and playing, they are very good. KD's been playing at an absurd level so far this season. I'm not sure that's sustainable. He's already missed 7 games with this calf problem. He's playing a huge load, and there's so much expected out of him on this roster. There's no way it's sustainable over the course of an 82-game season, so I do worry about that. 39 minutes per game for Kevin Durant. That shit can't happen. Like that's insane. But again, when they're healthy and rolling, the ball moves incredibly well. Tyus Jones has been an incredible addition for them. They're 7-3 in the clutch so far this season with a 122 offensive rating. That's really encouraging considering how bad they were in the clutch last year. We all kind of knew that was a pendulum that was going to swing in their direction. But Nurkic has been atrocious in a lot of ways so far this season. He's comparing himself to Kevin Durant, saying fans expect him to have a Kevin Durant skill set. I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. They just expect him to be good. Like, Nurkic is 57% at the rim so far this season. For a center, that is absolutely atrocious and absolutely terrible. They need a guy who could finish plays inside the paint. They move the ball so incredibly well, especially when all of their guys are playing. They put so much pressure on the defense. The ball is going to hop around. A center who actually knows how to put the ball in the basket at a high clip will be so important for them. And I don't know if they'll have the pieces to go and get a guy like that at the trade deadline, but Nurkic talking about they want me to be KD. No, nobody wants that. But injuries are going to be a problem for this team moving forward, and defensively, they're not that great, and we kind of knew that heading into the season. But their offense does look as scary as we expected, and that will be something that carries them moving forward. Next up, the Los Angeles Clippers. I figured the Clippers would be a bit of a feisty team. I figured they would be really, really good defensively, and just the 2-man game between Harden and Zubac would be enough to win them some basketball games. And that's kind of been how it's played out so far this season. I didn't really expect them to be 12-8 at this point in the season. They are top 5 in defense so far. They rebound the basketball incredibly well. Zubac is averaging 12.5 rebounds per game. He's also averaging 15 points per game. Like he's going to have an argument to get most improved player votes, as will a guy like Norman Powell, who's also been tremendous so far to start the season for them. Their offense is a little bit rough. They do have one of the worst offensive ratings in the clutch. So when the game slows down, just the lack of creators really starts to come back and bite them in the ass. The idea of Kawhi Leonard coming back would definitely help out there. I'm not sure that that's even remotely a possibility at this point. But this is a good basketball team. They're well coached. They put a lot of pressure on the basketball. Guys like Derek Jones Jr., guys like Chris Dunn. And the wall works, I think, Well, free throw shooting. There are numbers that back this up. The wall works. Next up, we have the New York Knicks. It's funny, as of the time I'm recording this, I just watched them damn near lose to the Charlotte Hornets skeleton squad. They won by 1 point. What an interesting team so far. What am I supposed to make of this team? They've been very good offensively. That's even with Jalen Brunson kind of having a slower start to the season efficiency-wise, even though he's really gotten it going recently. And Cat's been awesome offensively. I mean, 26 points per game, 45% from three. He's already had 2 40-point games so far this season. OG went tumbling into the stands, nearly harming Anne Hathaway. Be careful, OG, please. Popped off for a career-high 40 points against the Nuggets, 16 of 23 from the field. I was like, oh shit, OG might be an all-star. Like the way he's playing so far this season, he's playing at an unreal level defensively, and offensively he's having the best season of his career. This has to be an all-star level season for OG. It is 2 games since then. 8 points on 3 of 15 against the Mavericks, 8 points on 3 of 11 against the Charlotte Hornets. Ebbs and flows. These things will even out over the course of a year. But obviously their problem so far has been their defense. They give up the second most threes in the NBA. Opponents are shooting them at nearly a 40% clip. At a certain point, that stops becoming bad shooting luck. We know the problems defensively with Karl Anthony Towns. Just really not a reliable rim protector. Can get cooked in the pick and roll at times. So you do have to sort of hide him in a way by going drop defensively. And teams are just kind of sauteing that. He's also not a great drop defender. But I was just watching this game against the Hornets, and he was playing at the level of screens down the stretch, and their defense did look much better. But then you run into problems there as well because smart offense is going to make sure that Jalen Brunson, if you're playing at the screen, Jalen Brunson is going to be the low man, and that leads to problems as well. But really defensively, as easy as it is to shit on Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges has been very disappointing so far this season. Like very, very disappointing. He's hitting threes from the corners, which is nice. He's making mid-range jumpers. All of this stuff is nice. But where's the Mikal Bridges of old defensively? Is that just gone entirely? We kind of wrote that off in Brooklyn as saying, oh, well, he's had to be the number one guy offensively, so that's taking away from him defensively. But what's the excuse now? They're going to be a good team over the course of the season. They're going to figure some of this stuff out. Mitchell Robinson coming back will help them out tremendously. Precious Achiuwa coming back will help them out tremendously. They still have ammo to go out and make moves. This 8-man Tibbs rotation in November sucks. I hate it. But it's what they've sort of had to resort to. But they'll be a good basketball team. I'm not too worried about them. The Orlando Magic. I can't believe the Magic find themselves here, considering where they were to start this season. How rough it looked in the first few games without Paolo Banchero. They lost 5 straight games. They didn't even look like an NBA team offensively. What was going on out there? And then Franz Wagner said, you know what? It's time for me to lock the fuck in. They are now 10-1 in their last 11 games. One of the hottest teams in all of basketball. They have a lockdown defense that rebounds the ball incredibly well. They run you off the three-point line. They prevent shots at the rim. They force more long-range twos than any team in basketball. And Franz Wagner's playing like one of the best players in the sport. I mean, according to estimated wins added, he's been the second best player in the NBA so far this season. I mean, all-star, absolutely. All-NBA, the way that he's playing so far this season, absolutely. Jalen Suggs had a bit of a slow start to the season offensively, but it looks like he's picking it up recently. He's been tremendous defensively, as we all sort of expect. 30% from three as a team. That is the worst in basketball by a lot, but they get to the free throw line a ton. Anthony Black, when he's on the court, he makes things shake. Goga Bitadze, who's filled in for Wendell Carter Jr., has been really good. We saw this last year when Wendell Carter Jr. missed some time. Goga filled in and looked really, really good. That's sort of led to a little bit of controversy as to who should be playing more. Real quick, my man Rich, a.k.a. Mavs Draft on Twitter, had a tweet a couple days ago that I agree with 100%, that Goga is one of the best reclamation projects the Magic have had recently. Somebody mentioned Mo Wagner. Like, their backup bigs are both guys who weren't really supposed to be legitimate NBA players or were not, rotational players until they got to Orlando and have sort of developed. I'm really a big fan of Goga. All the things that he does as a connective playmaker, a finisher, a great rim protector in his own right. I can't believe the contract that he signed in Orlando this offseason. $7 million a year is a steal, especially as somebody who's coming off the bench by and large. Goga's a really good basketball player. And, especially with some other guys out, they kind of need that connected playmaking from the center position, and Goga provides them that. This is a good basketball team, and Franz Wagner playing at this level. When Paolo comes back, I think there's going to take a little bit of time for those two to settle into their roles with both of them on the court together the way Franz has been playing so far this season. But once they do, this team is definitely a threat. Closing out this tier, I am going with the Denver Nuggets. They're a bit all over the fucking map as a team, right? They looked completely and totally lost when Nikola Jokic was out due to the birth of a child. Congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Nikola Jokic. Look, when the reality is, right, Jokic is far and away the best player in the league so far this season. The gap between him and the second best player is probably about the gap between LeBron and the second best player in the early 2010s. That's how good Jokic has been so far this season. The big problem is Jamal Murray, I mean, you can only talk about it so much. Jamal Murray looks like a shell of himself. He has some games from here and there which are nice, but what we really need to see is a consistent stretch of basketball from him where he looks like the Jamal Murray of old, because if that's not there, I struggle to see how this team has real significant upside. I'm talking championship level upside, which you would want when you have a player as good as Jokic. But that's not to say all is bad. I mean, they dominate the Jokic minutes when he's on the floor. Christian Brown has been really, really good for them so far this season. It's been great to watch him. Russell Westbrook has been really, really solid at times for them so far this season. He's had some moments that have been bad, but I think by and large, you have to live with the Russell Westbrook minutes that you've gotten. MPJ's been strong for them. Julian Strawther has not taken the leap forward that you would have hoped for. They have a lot of things that are working against them, and I wanted them to be higher than this just because Jokic is playing at such an absurd level, but this is unfortunately where I have to draw the line. All right, next up we have the bus crash contenders tier. What do I mean by this? These are teams that I think are really, really good. I just think that they are a tier below the inner circle contenders. But, a few things break their way, like literally if a bunch of guys broke their legs in a bus crash on the way to the game, then they would have a really, really solid chance to make a deep run in the postseason. Kicking off this tier, I do have the Golden State Warriors, which seems a little bit harsh. They are 2-4 over their last 6 games. Granted, Steph Curry missed the last game for them. This is an interesting team to me. I believe in them 100% defensively. They put so much pressure on the ball. They fly around defensively. Draymond Green has been otherworldly so far defensively. I mean, it really feels like he's barely lost a step defensively over the course of his career. Von Looney's even having like a little bit of a renaissance when at times last year it looked like he was a little bit washed. They're a deep team. They play all of their guys, and that is admirable. I'm not that big of a believer in what they've got going on offensively, which is why I have them maybe a little bit lower than you would expect. Wiggins, it does kind of look like he might be returning to form a little bit. 17 points per game. Beyond that, what's more encouraging for him, he is 41% from 3 so far this season. And I know I said at the top that this is just if you're dropping me in, and I don't know too much about these teams from the past, but I can't shake the idea that this is probably just a good shooting stretch for Wiggins, and these things are going to even themselves out over time. Like Buddy Hield over the last 10 or 11 games has really fell back down to earth. Kuminga's missed some time, which hurt them, especially their bench scoring. Podziemski's been really struggling to find his shot so far this season. And I do worry that when push comes to shove, who's going to be that guy next to Steph Curry? Because Steph Curry's been awesome this season. Who's going to be that guy next to Steph that helps them out offensively? And I worry that they don't really have that right now. But defensively, they are playing at an absolutely elite level. And I have to put them in this tier because of that. Next up, I do have the Memphis Grizzlies, who have been balling out as of late. They are one of the 5 teams in the NBA who are top 5 in both, or top 10 in both offense and defense, I guess I should say. What prevents me from like really going strong with them being a top 5 team so far this season is their schedule has stunk like shit. Like it's been a really, really bad schedule for them. Now they've taken advantage of it, so I don't want to like poo-poo them too much. But they got a bunch of guys who just make things happen. I mean, Ja Morant's only played in 9 games so far this season for them. He's had flashes of that prime Ja Morant when that minute restriction sort of lifts up. If it does, I'm assuming it's going to lift up over the course of the season. He's going to be playing some incredibly high-level basketball. Jaren Jackson Jr. has been really, really solid so far this season. I didn't love his season last year, but I completely wrote that off as him just being tasked with having a 30% usage rate on a terrible basketball team. He's been really good for them so far this season. That's good to see. Like Scottie Pippen Jr., who last season, I brought this up in the offseason. Like Scottie Pippen Jr. in the back half of the season for the Grizzlies was awesome. And he was one of these guys where it's like, how do you not have that guy in your rotation? I know like in theory, when all of these guys come back, where's Scottie Pippen Jr. going to fit into that mix? But the way that he's playing so far this season, he's absolutely sort of a staple of their rotation moving forward. Scottie Pippen Jr. has been incredible. I mean, just a testament to how good this Grizzlies roster is, how good they are at finding talent, developing talent. A guy like Scottie Pippen, I mentioned, they just pick up off the street. I mean, he looks like a great little combo guard who pairs really well next to Ja Morant. Good at scoring the basketball. A decent playmaker. I see people compare him to Tyus Jones all the time. I don't really see that comparison. Tyus Jones much more of a floor general than somebody like Scottie Pippen Jr. But then you get a guy like Jalen Wells, who they drafted the 2nd round, is one of the best rookies in the NBA right now, can shoot the 3-ball, great connective playmaker, really good defender as well. Somebody who looks like he's been in the league for 6 or 7 years, who they just drafted in the 2nd round this past season. It's guys like Jalen Wells who, the reason why this Grizzlies team has been so good, despite the fact that Desmond Bane hasn't looked so good to start the season, despite the fact that Marcus Smart hasn't looked so good to start the season. Also, guys like Jay Huff, like we've seen Zach Edey already deal with injuries. Jay fucking Huff comes in out of nowhere and looks like a really good basketball player. I mean, this team is just making it happen, and it's a testament to how good they are at scouting, how good they are developing players. And it's also like this weird thing as well where it shows you how talented this league is, because the Grizzlies deal with so many injuries, and they just plug and play these dudes who otherwise wouldn't be getting opportunities opportunities across the league, and these guys are like full-fledged, ready to go NBA players. It's crazy. The Dallas Mavericks, who are 6-1 over their last 7 games, most of those games without Luka Doncic, it really goes to show, entering the season, we said that this was on paper the best roster in the Luka Doncic era, and you're sort of seeing that all bear out. I mean, they've gotten balanced performances over the last 7 games. Kyrie Irving has been really, really strong. He's playing like an all-star. He's playing like an all-NBA level player. But, in years past, Kyrie would have had to pop off for 40 points if Luka Doncic was out just to win games. And Kyrie's just been able to sort of continue to be a bus driver in a lot of ways for this Mavericks team, where he's sort of reading the game. When the team needs buckets, he goes out and get it. Other than that, he's sort of letting his guys cook. PJ Washington's been incredible so far this season. Najee Marshall's been phenomenal so far this season. Quentin Grimes has looked really, really good over the past couple of weeks. Nearly 50% of their points have come in the paint. That is 3rd in the NBA so far this season. They are 3rd in the NBA so far this season in paint's point per game. They put a ton of pressure on the basket. And what's crazy is they haven't even really shot that well from 3 just yet. These 3-point numbers for them are starting to tick up over the last few games. And I think with the pressure they put on the rim and the playmakers that they have in Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, but also the secondary playmakers they have in Najee Marshall and a guy like Derek Lively, who could sort of pass out of the middle of the floor. We see him do that all the time. A guy like Spencer Dinwiddie off the bench, obviously, even Jaden Hardy from time to time. Those 3-point numbers are going to tick up, and this offense is going to be very, very difficult to stop. And their defense has been incredibly solid so far this season. They're one of the 5 teams in the league to be top 10 in both offense and defense. Now, they do have 7 clutch losses so far this season, which is the most in the NBA. At least it was a couple days ago. It might not be the case anymore, but they had a 4-game stretch where they lost 4 straight games by 1 singular possession. And these things are going to work themselves out. It sounds like Luka's going to miss another week, which sucks. But when he comes back and when he gets to that MVP form that we know that he can play at, this is going to be a very, very good basketball team that absolutely will be contenders in the Western Conference. Closing out this tier, it has to be the Houston Rockets. I mean, I'm in. I'm fully in. I've bought this team heading into the season. I've predicted them to be a top 6 team in the Western Conference. I figured they improved their win total by 20 games last year. Why would they just stop improving? If you were to tell me that they had this good of a start to the season, I would have assumed that we saw the Jalen Green breakout where he found that consistency, and he's been a big reason for him. Now, it is funny that anytime a page tweets about the Houston Rockets, Jalen Green is for some reason the guy that they are putting as the face of the team. He's been bad. He's been struggling so far this season. But who hasn't been struggling is the Terror Twins. I mean, Amin Thompson, Tari Eason off the bench defensively. What a fucking nightmare these two are. Like, what a nightmare. The second biggest nightmare for Twin Towers I can think of. They have all of the ingredients defensively to be a team that has a deep postseason run. Absolutely. I do worry about things offensively for them, which is why, obviously I can't put them in that top tier with some of these other teams. And offensively, they're a little bit behind some of the other teams that we've even talked about behind them. But I am such a believer in what this team does defensively. I'm also a believer in, Şengün's going to see that efficiency tick up over the course of the season. I mean, it has to happen. Fred VanVleet's going to see some 3 balls drop. I do think Jalen Green's going to look better than this. But other than that, this team's absolutely going to make trades. Like, this team is going to be aggressive at the trade deadline. I think that 100%. And this ranking isn't looking at that. It isn't looking at the future. I still think they've been a top 5 team in the NBA so far this season. They rebound incredibly well. No team generates more possessions than them. Rebounding the basketball, giving themselves second chance opportunities, forcing turnovers. They're going to outshoot you almost every single night. And that is a recipe to win basketball games right there. To clarify, what I'm saying there is they're going to put up more shots than you because of all of the second chances they get, rebounding the basketball, all the turnovers that they force. They're such great athletes. They get out and run in transition. This is a nightmare team, folks, and I really, really do love watching them. They're well coached. They play hard as fuck. I love everything about the way that they've played so far this season. They're one of my favorite teams in the league to watch. All right, we're moving on to the final tier. These are the inner circle contenders. These 3 teams right here, I do think are ahead of every other team in the NBA. It doesn't really feel fair that I'm putting the Cleveland Cavaliers here. They are 17-2. They have the best record in the NBA. They are 15-0 to start the season. It's not a standings update, right? So the record doesn't necessarily mean you are the best team in the league. They are a very good basketball team. Kenny Atkinson has them playing some great basketball. Yeah, sorry, chiming in right here. They lost to the Atlanta Hawks as I was making this video. So they are currently 17-3. They've lost twice in a row to the Atlanta Hawks. So I feel better about having them here now that that's all said and done. Darius Garland returning to that all-star form has been really, really big for them. Very, very encouraging. Not just for this season, but just moving forward as a franchise, seeing that guy get back to the level that we've seen in years past. Similar for Evan Mobley. He's really starting to take that step forward where he just looks like a more complete and comfortable basketball player anytime you watch him play. For example, I think Mobley's cooled off a little bit since his scorching hot start to the season, but they are letting him bring the ball up more in transition, pushing the pace with him. I think that this is trying to develop that skill set for him so he can grab a rebound, get up the court, use that size, use that length, use that athleticism to be a freight train in transition. But it's also a way to get him going offensively, right? Because it is kind of difficult with so many other options on the floor offensively for you to just play through Mobley at times. And this is an opportunity for him to get going, to get some shots, but also utilize that playmaking in transition. I like when they go to that, even though I don't think the numbers support it as being like a super efficient play for them so far this season. Having a guy like Jared Allen in the middle of the floor, defensively and offensively, all of the things that opens up for your team, just there's a reason why they're as good as they are. And even a guy like Ty Jerome, like if the season were to end today, would have real legitimate six-man of the year argument. But I do, the reason why they're third and not first or even second is I do worry about them just in a 7-game series. The game really, really slows down offensively. How much do I believe in Evan Mobley? Like if a team's like Evan Mobley, you're going to have to create shit for yourself. We are shrinking the floor. You're going to have to create shit for yourself to make these things work offensively for this team. Do I still have a lot of faith and trust in that? Eventually, no. But that doesn't mean it can't get there. They're a great basketball team. There's a reason why they started the season 15-0. I don't give a fuck who they played. Winning 15 straight games is incredibly difficult to do, obviously. I did toy with the idea of this team who I have at number 2, the Oklahoma City Thunder, putting them at number 1. These 3 games since Isaiah Hartenstein has made his debut. They're 3-0. He's been a huge net positive. You just saw immediately, how good Isaiah Hartenstein was going to be on this team. So he's not a shooter, right? But if you've watched Isaiah Hartenstein at all, keep in mind, I was singing the good song about Isaiah Hartenstein 2 years ago. I saw how good this guy was. But his screen, he's such a good pick and roll player. His screening is so good. He's such a good screener, right? He rolls to the rim so hard. He has that floater, that little jump hook, that little float shot, that push shot that he has in the middle of the floor that is absolutely automatic. He's such a presence there that he does space the floor. Like, you have to play high on those screens or else he's going to make you pay in so many ways, whether that's the screen that he sets is so good that guys cannot get over that. If you're in a drop coverage, the screen defender is not going to be, the chase defender is not going to get over that screen quick enough, and it's going to be a wide open pull-up jumper for the ball handler. Or, Isaiah Hartenstein is going to roll to the rim hard as fuck and get to that spot in the middle of the floor, and if you're dropping, he's going to have plenty of space for that floater. He's great defensively. He moves his feet so incredibly well. When he's on an island, you don't really have a mismatch. He anchors the paint. He protects the rim. He's a great rebounder. He fits like a glove on this team. J-Dub's been awesome so far this season. Shea is doing Shea things. I mean, just the 30 points on great efficiency every single night. Yeah, this team is good as shit. I don't know what you guys want me to say. They are elite. I think that they are kind of head and shoulders above the next team in the Western Conference currently, as it currently stands. And we haven't even seen Chet and Hartenstein yet on the floor together. But I do have the Celtics as the number 1 team in the NBA currently. They are the best offense in the league. There's no teams do what they do. I mean, they get Kristaps Porzingis back. He's a fucking cheat code for this team. No team does what they do. Do I really need to spend any time talking about them? We know who they are. They haven't really changed how they play at all. They shoot 50+ threes a game, it feels like, and it feels like they make 22, 24 a game. Good luck winning that. Good luck winning that math battle. They do it every night. Good luck even competing in that. You might get lucky every now and then where they have a really shitty shooting night and your team just goes nuclear for 3. But over the course of a season, you're not really going to be able to compete with that. Jason Tatum's been great. I mean, Jaylen Brown's even been struggling from 3. And I watch Celtics games. They coast. They're coasting. They're not playing at like the effort and intensity level that we saw at times last year. Because they know they don't need to over the course of an 82-game season. And they're still number 1 in offense and number 8 in defense and 15-3. I don't know. Good luck. If you guys enjoyed this Uncanny Valley video, slightly biased with no shades on. Again, I didn't realize that until halfway through the fucking video, but no way was I going to re-record any of this. Leave a like, leave a comment, subscribe. Where do you guys agree? Where do you guys disagree? Let me know.